Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Piyu Roy and I'm a program manager of academic programs here at University of Washington Professional and Continuing Education. We are doing a career management series after the success of our last career webinar series with Matt Youngquist. We are doing this career management series. Hopefully, if all of us are fortunate, hopefully we spend more time in a career than looking for a job over our lifetimes. And so for us to all be thoughtful about actively managing our careers, we've designed this career webinar in a 4-part series every Thursday for the next 4 Thursdays, 4 to 5 p.m. Also, this is our first series we're doing in collaboration of University of Washington Alumni Association. And I want to give a chance for Yolanda, who's an assistant director there, to welcome her group as well.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Yolanda Ng, the Associate Director of Membership for the UW Alumni Association. Really glad you could join us today and really grateful for the Professional Continuing Education for allowing us to partner on this career management series. So we have a special offer for UWA members. If you are a member, we're also doing a 30-minute bonus post session after this. So we have our UWA event photographer, Tara Brown, offering tips on how to take a good professional headshot. So if you would like to attend after this webinar session, I will put the link in the chat to register, and then you'll get your link in the confirmation, or link to the Zoom to register for that event. So just really grateful to have everybody here today.
Thank you. So if you've been following us for a while, Matt needs no introduction. He's a veteran, highly experienced career coach. He's about 25 years of experience and has, on both one-on-one and in group sessions, managed thousands of students and helped them in their career. We're starting our series with him on strategies to explore your next career, and we're all very excited for this webinar. Without taking too much of your time, a few housekeeping rules. The slides and the recording of this session will be posted back to the Career Management Series sign-up page, just like it was done last time. So expect it around Friday. The slides will be there, the recording will be there. We have a Q&A box. The chat is disabled, but we have a Q&A box. So please put your questions down. We'll kind of feel it out and see if the questions should all be towards the end. We have about 15 minutes Q&A at the end. And we'll also think about, as we progress, to see if there are some natural breaks where we can answer some of those questions. If you see a question that you also have, please do a thumbs up. So those questions, more important questions with higher priority, kind of bubble up. And without taking more of your time, let's hand it over to Matt.
Things going. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Piyu. Thanks, Yolanda. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everyone who invited me and is helping coordinate this. Nice to meet some of you here for the first time. I suspect some of you might have come to the earlier webinars on LinkedIn and resumes, things like that, which were really fun to do. But tonight's topic, as you know, is, I'll just say in all the years I've been doing career coaching, I fell into this field in the early 90s as a UW graduate and just turned it into something I love to do. I had no grand plans of, I didn't even know what a career coach was back then. But like many of us, got out of college, just needed a job, and I ended up doing data entry for $5 an hour at this little startup that was doing career coaching, and I just took on more and more and learned and have kind of turned it into something I'll do my whole life. Now, looking back at all that, I will say, and I'll warn you, there is no harder part, at least from my perspective, of career coaching than helping figure out what to be when they grow up, or perhaps more accurately for many of us, what to be now that they have grown up, if they're mid-career and thinking about making a change. Things like resumes, LinkedIn, interviewing. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that stuff, but it's pretty black and white. It's like, here's how you write a resume. But in all these years, I have not found any foolproof ways for any of us figuring out, if we don't like what we're doing, if we want to make a change, what is that next thing? It's a tough issue, but I've put together an hour of what I think are some of my best thoughts or techniques that hopefully will help some of you that are thinking about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing is there's a couple visuals that are some better known than others, but I think just for those of you visual learners out there, Of course, all of us would say the perfect dream job probably lies at the intersection of three circles. It's something that you're not only good at doing, but you really enjoy doing. And on top of it, the bottom left kicker is, will someone actually pay you to do it? So if any of you are lucky enough to have found that, my hat is off to you, because that's a wonderful place to be. Of course, there's many of us that know what we're good at or what we want to do, but getting someone to pay us to do it is always a bit of the trick. So that's sort of a fairly famous way of looking at careers. Now there's a next visual that adds a little extra thought to it. So if you look at this little Venn diagram, it basically says the same thing, but if you look at where the circles intersect, there's some useful information there. So if you're good at something and you want to be doing it, the middle is, how can you make money at it? How can you take that passion and that skill and find a way to make a living out of it? On the flip side, some of you may appreciate things you're good at and the market wants you to do accounting or project management, but you don't really enjoy it. You don't want to do it. So you have to learn to say no, or in some cases, walk away from something that the market just keeps putting you in that box, right? So I have a lot of clients who've got that issue. And then, of course, possibly for many of you getting education through UW and UW PCE, there's a lot of people who know what they want to do and have determined that they could get paid for, but they got to learn to do it better because it's a new career or something they haven't done a lot of. So for many of you, training, education, that's going to be the key to success. So we've got the first kind of, very happy-go-lucky visual. We got the second one. And then a few months ago, someone sent me this one and I cracked up when I saw it. So take a look at that and see if any of you can relate to that one. So there are some people who do none of those things and they're really lost and confused. But yeah, so anyway, in a visual sense, I think this is very accurate. I think these are the tensions and the issues that come into play. Is you not only have to enjoy something, you got to actually get good at doing it. And it has to be, it's not all about you. It's got to be something the market has a need for and you'll get paid for. So at the highest level, I just throw that out there as some food for thought. Now, in terms of how the marketplace and the landscape out there has changed, I would say, having again done this as long as I have, that it has gotten in some ways tougher to make a career change, in some ways easier. But in some ways, there's some new things about the job market that I think have complicated this. So I don't know if all of you agree with me, but I would argue the job market has gotten much more specialized in recent decades than it used to be. Back in the 90s, you could be a marketing person, an IT person, a salesperson. Now there's 100 flavors of every one of these. Well, are you a product marketing person, a field marketing person, a cause marketing person, on and on digital marketing person? So it's just like the consumer market where you used to order just a cup of coffee. Well, now we live in such a, abundant world that, people don't ask for a cup of coffee. They want their 3-shot soy latte, extra hot or whatever. So a lot of people are out there trying to be generalists. Hey, I'm good at everything, or I wear a lot of hats. And there are still jobs where that's useful, but I will say that it seems like the market is just really rewards specialists, people who figure out a certain career niche and really work at getting good at it. So again, generalist isn't a bad thing. Sometimes they turn out to be even better employees, but the way the market looks at things, it definitely has drifted to more specialized. Okay, it's also estimated that before the turn of the millennium, there was about 10,000 careers people could consider. That number has multiplied by 10 since the millennium hit, because as everything got more specialized and fragmented, and some of it is just companies coming up with silly new names for things. But again, there's 10 times more types of jobs out there than there used to be, which means not that there really ever was a simple way to pick a career, but now even a specialist like me who does this for a living, I certainly don't know all those 100,000 niches. They change constantly. So it's not as easy as just, oh, you do this, you should do this. It's going to take some of the research and brainstorming tools I'm looking forward to sharing you later in the session here. Okay, another thing many of you can probably relate to is if you do most of your career research and job hunting just looking at published want ads on the internet, you're probably going to feel pretty inadequate, because now that companies can put as much stuff as they want in those ads without having to pay for every word, like back in the newspaper days. Almost every job makes people feel inadequate and insecure because companies dump in so many qualifications, 20 things they want. So it's not that those aren't important or that some companies might demand those, but I guess I would just caution you, if you see jobs out there that the essence of them really speaks to you and you think you'd be good at them, don't get too scared away just because you don't have every qualification. Even people who do those jobs probably don't have every qualification. So you've kind of got to see through that a little bit and realize that's more of a wish list, and not every company is going to find all that stuff. But yeah, don't let it intimidate you too much. It's just kind of the way it works today. And then the last thing I would mention here is very similar to how, social media, there's many issues where people think everyone in the world is having more fun than them or makes more money than them or is happier than them. I see that a lot with careers where a lot of people seem to think everyone but them or a lot of their friends, everything's great and perfect. And why isn't their career better? And I'll just tell you, when you pull the curtain back, it's a grass is greener thing. The vast majority of people I meet have some things they like about their career and some things they don't like about their career. So just be careful of thinking, if my job isn't perfect, something's wrong with me, because every career is going to have trade-offs, as we're going to talk about. Okay. All right. So the first thing, knowing that I'm guessing a lot of you on this call came here because you're not 100% satisfied with your career, and there may be all different ends of the spectrum on that. But whenever I have people come in and they hire me to help them look at career changes, I always start by trying to pinpoint what is it about your career that you're not happy with, because it's not as easy as simply just saying, well, I don't like my career. Okay. In many cases, I would probably say half of the cases that people are ready to throw away their career in accounting and do something different or whatever, it's not that the work they're doing isn't a good fit. I'm sorry, let me take that back. If the work you're doing is not something you enjoy doing, if you are an accounting job and you don't like numbers, if you're a salesperson and you don't like people, yes, that is saying the work you have found yourself in is probably not a good fit for your strengths and your personality. And that would be a case where you might look at a career change. But just as often, I see people that the company they're with isn't the right fit. So they may actually like project management, but they're in a company that's full of type A people that are very competitive, and that's not their style. Or they're in a company that has just only values money and tells you to lie to the customer to make a sale, and that's just not a fit with their values. So half the time, people actually like the career they're in. They're just in the wrong company. They're in an environment that's just not a good fit for them. Okay. I also see quite a bit. Number 3, they just have a bad boss. They've got a boss who obviously isn't supporting them or they don't get along with, and that happens a lot. And so they color, oh, I got to change careers, rather than I've got to find a place with a boss who supports me or people I get along with better. So I understand when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to determine which of these it is. But number 2 and 3 are a lot easier to fix. Get a new job, get a new boss, than to completely change your career, which doesn't happen as much as you'd think. And the final piece is some people, and hopefully not too many of you, I have met some people I think just have very unrealistic expectations of careers, right? Who think there's a lot of jobs out there that make 6 figures, give you total work-life balance, you work with great people, you do something you love, and you make a difference in the world. And there's nothing wrong with looking for that. I'm just saying there's not many careers that would check all of those boxes. So some people, I think, just have an overly rosy idea of what they're looking for, and they might be just constantly discouraged. So anyway, just some food for thought as far as assessing, if you're not happy with what you're doing, what really is the issue, so that you can come up with the right treatment for it, in other words. Okay. All right. Now, before I get farther along, a lot of people, almost every book and resource on careers for decades has talked about passion. What is your passion? Follow your passion. What is your bliss? And there's nothing wrong with passion and trying to find a career that really aligns with that. But there's one really interesting thing my mentor taught me that I wanted to share on that, which is, what does passion actually, where does that word come from? It comes from a Latin word, patior, which means to suffer, as you can see on the screen there. Whoa, what do you mean by that? To suffer? That's not what people usually think of. So as you read that definition, what I mean is, there's a difference between having interests and having a passion. Having a passion means there is something you are so fired up about, painting, politics, sustainability, whatever it is, that you will truly suffer to make that your career. You will make $25,000 a year. You will relocate your family to Indiana. I mean, whatever it means. So I think the word passion is used a little too cheaply out in the job market. Passion is really those people, like I said, who were put on this earth and they know I want to do this. When I talk to most of my clients about passion, what they usually have are interests. Well, I like spending time with my family. Well, I like sports, so I like the outdoors. But again, that's an interest. A passion would be, I like the outdoors so much, I'm again willing to work for a wilderness nonprofit and not make a lot of money because I'm so committed to that cause. So I just want to say that because I think a lot of people feel I have to have this passion. What's my hidden passion? What's this epiphany that I'm missing? And the vast majority of people don't have that. I never had it. I fell into a career that I love, and I not for 1 second said, "Oh, I'm passionate about helping people with career issues." So don't feel, too bad if you don't have something like that you want to build your whole life and career around. That's actually much more the exception than the norm. Okay. All right, let's press on. So in actual practice, for someone who's really thinking about a change, I would break it down into 4 different types of changes that one could make. So as you can see here, the first one, the top left, career continuation. As I said, about half of the people coming to me that think they want to change careers end up actually choosing to do career continuation, meaning, yeah, they might shift to a new job in the same field, different company, get a different boss. They might slightly change their duties, or, someone might ask their boss to take on some extra responsibilities, but they decide, you know what, my career isn't so bad that I need to start over again and do something totally different. Or in some cases, they might look at all their alternatives and say, you know what, I think the situation I'm in now is better than what my alternatives are. So someone might say, I don't love working at Boeing, but once I evaluate everything, it's a stable job. I'm paid well. I get a lot of work-life balance. So rather than roll the dice on a totally new career, I'm going to stay where I'm at and just learn to be fine with it. You have people who do the gray one, the career shift, which is when you don't completely change what you're doing, you pivot off of either the skills you've built, the transferable skills, or the industry knowledge you have. Because the 2 things companies value most in people are industry knowledge and proven skills. So think of it this way. Let's say you're a, salesperson for a .com company. And you might either say, well, I know so much now about .coms and e-commerce and that stuff that I'm not going to give that up. I'm going to find another e-commerce company that would value that, but I don't want to do sales anymore. I'm going to see if I can go do marketing for them, or human resources, or recruiting. So you're changing your job title, but you're not changing your industry, because that preserves like half of the value you have. Consequently, others may say, I don't want to work in the .com industry anymore. So I'm a salesperson. I'm going to take my sales skills and go find a different industry to plug them into, whatever that might be, a service company, manufacturing, hospitality. So you see, my point is you're not completely changing. You're just changing like half of what you do and finding a new home for it. Okay. Now, the gold box in the bottom left, that's a wholesale career change. That's when I had a client who was a software project manager that went back and became a math teacher. I had someone who was a marketing director that now is a hairdresser, because they completely said, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I want to make a major change. And they reinvent themselves completely in a new field. Okay. So that's really a career change, is like a big, big change. And then last but not least, the blue box deserves its own special niche, because self-employment is kind of a direction unto itself. Whether someone starts a business, buys a franchise, somehow comes up with some gig economy stuff and real estate investments or passive income. So that's kind of a whole different ball of wax we're not going to talk much about, but I would say self-employment deserves its own place, because that one, if you can find a path to that will make you money, gives you a lot of control over your career future. But most common people were looking at those 3 other buckets, okay? All right, a couple questions. People ask the return on investment on additional training, considering a graduate degree. Yeah, that's a great question. My short answer is just, no offense to UW, but education takes time and it does require an investment. So I would make darn sure you research that degree or that certificate and talk to some people in the field that you want to get into and make sure they value that credential enough for it to be worth your time. I wouldn't spend a whole bunch of money on some general degree or something unless you've got evidence this is in demand, this is something. So it kind of depends on what you're looking to get, but I would definitely do some research before making that investment. And that's where LinkedIn and other ways can be a great source for that. I have had people later in life that just said, I don't think I'll get enough return in the years in this career to make it worth my while. And I have other people that get that training, get into the new career and never look back. So it's kind of an individual question. The next question that was about tips for legal aliens with a good resume, but no corporate America. Unfortunately, Karen, that's just not something on the topic of what we're getting into. The prior webinars that were recorded earlier a few months ago are much more about that kind of stuff. So I might refer you to go look at kind of that stuff. Okay. Yeah, here's the questions. They're all going to start coming in. So I won't be able to answer all of them, but I'll do my best. Let's see, if a job requirement asks for something you don't have, like an advanced degree, and you only have a bachelor's, we don't know how lenient they're going to be on that. If they were to say mandatory or required, well, common sense. You probably aren't going to get anywhere without that required degree. But if it doesn't say mandatory or says equivalent experience, I'd give it a shot because you never know how open-minded they might be, or maybe they haven't had a strong response to it. So I would kind of take my cue. What do they actually say? Is it desired or required? And I would go from there. Okay. And then lastly, and I'll move on, if someone goes into cybersecurity from IT, I would call that a career shift because cybersecurity still is all about IT. So if someone was in a different IT job, you still have all this valuable knowledge of IT systems. So that's not a total career change. That is more of a pivot or a shift into something that relates in some way to what you've been doing. And those are easier to pull off than a total, like I said, I'm sick of career coaching. I'm going to go become an auto mechanic. That's a career change. That would be me starting over with virtually no experience. Okay. All right. Moving on from there. So the next thing I always talk about when we're talking about career exploration is some people find this fascinating. Some find it not so fascinating. But again, the way I see things after so many years of doing this, this is going to sound very egotistical, but for any of you who have seen the Matrix movies, where Keanu Reeves is like the only one who sees that the world is an illusion and it's these ones and zeros streaming. When anyone comes in and tells me about their career, just having done this so long, I just look at it as a career is a catalyst. A career turns time and energy into stuff. So we all put our 30, 40, 50 hours a week in, most of us at least. And the thing that makes a career is what does a job or a career turn that time into? Okay. So if you really want to have career satisfaction, you got to think really deeply about what do you need your career to do for you? What do you want it to do for you? And what are the non-negotiable things it has to do for you? Okay. If you never get clear on that, you're going to be shooting in the dark, throwing darts, and might end up in a job or career that's even less of a fit for you now, because it all comes down to that want and need satisfaction. And I'm going to show you a graphic for that. As I said earlier, no job is perfect. I feel pretty good about what I do. I've got some complaints. If you want to buy me a beer, I'll tell you the things I don't like about my career, and you tell me the things you like and don't like about yours. So just realize every career is going to have some trade-offs. Okay. It's very easy to take things for granted if you currently have a career like I've had people from Microsoft that decide they want to move on to new companies, and then they succeed and they get in another company and they go, what do you mean I have to pay for my medical insurance? And what do you mean I can't take 4 weeks off? Or they realize, Microsoft has very generous benefits that they took for granted. They didn't realize other companies have that. Or maybe you've been at a company for 10 years and the boss lets you do your own thing, come and go as you please. And you don't realize if you start over in a new job, they may want you to punch a clock and you don't get that freedom. So if you're thinking about changing careers, it's really important to not only appreciate what you have in your current career, as well as examine what are you trying to get in your new career, because it's a little more complicated than people think. Last but not least on this, priorities change over time. So many of you can probably relate to, oh, in my 20s, I was willing to kill myself and work 80 hours a week and travel 80% because it was about the titles and climbing the ladder and the money. Well, now that I'm 46 years old and have kids, I want to spend time with them and my family, and my spouse has a good job. So you may say money is not as important now, or titles aren't as important as they used to be. So don't be surprised if your needs and wants change over time. It's not like something you're born with, it never changes. So I really want people to think about that. And I have a little model that when you pick up the slides, or if you pick up the slides, I break career satisfaction. I just came up with this little model that says, to me, there's 8 major things that careers can do for you. Okay. And they're all defined there on the page, but I have people rank from 1 to 5 on each of these scales. How much is their current career doing for them? 1 being low, 5 being high. And then to also rank or circle, what do they want in their next career or their next job? So real quickly, someone might say, income, yeah, I'm making decent money. I'm a 3. I've got a good middle class income, but they might say, I want to make a boatload of money. So my need is a 5. I want to find a career that will make me as much money as I possibly can. Someone else may say, I'm a 1 or a 2. I don't need to make as much money anymore because I've saved it, or I have a working spouse, or whatever. So if you went around that, for each of these, there's some important things. I won't bore you with all of it, reading them all, but like impact. Some people want a career that makes a difference in the world, has a purpose. Believe it or not, there's plenty of people who would be a 1 on that. They say, I don't need my career to do that for me. I volunteer on the side, and I don't need my job to save the world. So it's fascinating to me over the years, all the people I've had fill this out, that no 2 are alike. It's like everyone's a little different in what they want to get out of their job and career. And like I said, to me, that's essential, because if you start thinking about a career change, let's say you did want to go become a teacher and you've been something else, I encourage you to talk to a few teachers and ask them, what is it like being a teacher? Because I've had people do jobs like that and they romanticized it. Oh, all day I'm having fun with the kids and creatively teaching them and whatever. And they go actually get that job and they find out the reality is very different from what they saw on TV or what they thought. Oh, it's so political and you don't have much creativity. You got to teach to the test and follow the really standard curriculum. So again, I wouldn't go after a new career without doing some serious research and talking to people in it, just to make sure I'm not chasing something that's not going to be a fit, or where I just don't understand what that career is about and what the trade-offs are. Okay. All right. So I'll move on from there. But as I said, I think setting your priorities and getting clear about your wants and needs is a really big part of this. Okay. So now we get to the part I'm guessing many of you are going to be most interested in, which is, so how do you figure out what to go do if you're not sure and you're not happy with what you are doing? If you read what I wrote there, this is not something most people are happy to hear, but I just, over the years, I say the job market doesn't care about me or you or our livelihoods, or I wouldn't even say, do any of us deserve a great job? I would say no. I don't think deserving has anything to do with how the actual marketplace works. I think the marketplace, the job market, is like a machine, right? And what it's focused on, because companies are the ones who create the jobs and do the hiring, is they hire people to come solve problems for them. So it's not about who deserves it. It's not about who's fair. I think we've all seen people, who got a great job that we might go, they're not as the brightest person. How did they get that job? And brilliant people stuck in jobs that are not great. It's just not fair out there. That's not how it's built. So the single biggest thing, someone who wants to change careers, what I think the most effective technique is to study and look at what are called KSAs, okay? So for those who haven't heard that term, it's a human resource word, and it stands, as you see there, for knowledge, skills, and abilities. So the currency of the job market, the stuff we all possess that makes us valuable to a potential employers that we build jobs and careers off of, are knowledge, skills, and abilities. Okay, and there are 3 different things. So in the pages that follow, which again, you'll be able to access if you want, skills skills are specific specialized tasks and competencies you've developed. It's as you see there, if you can fill in the blank, I know how to blank, it's probably a skill. I know how to do pivot tables. I know how to speak Spanish. I know how to write grant applications. So if you could identify a bunch of things you know how to do from your current job or your personal life or wherever you got it, you want to take that inventory and you want to just not censor yourself, but just say, in a room of 100 people, what could I get done? What problem could I solve that maybe 9 out of 10 of those other people couldn't solve? That's what a skill is about. So I'm sure all of you already have a bunch of those if you really think about it. And there are also things you can get trained or pick up as well. Okay. Now, knowledge is a little different. Knowledge is more intellectual knowledge or industry background. So knowledge tends to be subjects you know about or have studied, industries you've worked in, topics you know more about than the average person. So let's say like you grew up and your family owned a hotel or something. You might not have ever worked in the hotel industry or hospitality industry, but you grew up around it. So you know more about it and how it works and the terminology than the next person on the street. That knowledge could be valuable and useful to finding a new career if you honor the process and actually write it down. Again, what you don't want to do is censor yourself and not write things down just because you're jumping to conclusions. Well, I don't see how that would ever help me. The whole point of what I'm building you up to is brainstorming your options. And I'll say it again, the best way to brainstorm it is to first take stock of what's in your pantry of ingredients. What do you have? And then we're going to see next, how do you cook with that? What could you combine these dots into that you're not thinking of? Okay. And some great comments are coming in. Yes, Russ, these KSAs can also be combined with motivation or drive. That's a little above what I'm going to get into tonight. Someone asked options for individuals wanting to get out of corporate. I won't be able to speak specifically to that, but the techniques I'm going to show you next are perfectly suitable for someone looking at getting out of corporate. It doesn't matter what you're looking to do. These techniques I'm going to show you will help you with that. Okay, so hang tight on that one. And then Salufa, if I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, a parent coming back to work after raising kids. It's a combination of both using these techniques I'm going to show you to figure out with whatever skills and strengths you have, either from your home life or a prior career you might have had before raising kids. That's the stuff again you want to capture on paper. Here's the knowledge I accumulated. Here's my skills. Here's my abilities. The next one, which are your personal qualities and strengths, right? I've always been a good listener. I'm good with people. I'm well organized. Those are abilities. So you're going to want to, again, take stock of all that and then run them through the techniques I'm going to show you next to see what is out there in the world today that connects to those things. So for all of you asking questions, this process is the one I would recommend versus being able to really specifically get into your exact situation. Okay. So KSAs, that is the currency of the realm, that the whole market revolves around those, whether you call it that or not. That's how the market works. Okay. And if any of you try this exercise and get a little stumped, I just have a few tips here to make sure you do a thorough job and you get all your stuff out of you on the table. So if you have any past performances, job descriptions, you might pull them out and look at them because maybe you've forgotten some things you've done in your past jobs that would be great to put down on your KSA inventory. If you've got friends or colleagues or family members who know you pretty well, you might bring them into the loop and say, hey, I'm kind of, I hate selling myself and I think I kind of have a blind spot. Is there anything you think I'm missing? And get them to comment on your stuff. And they might point out a lot of things you've overlooked. Another little trick is you could just go out to the job market, go out to Indeed.com and look for jobs like the ones you've held. So like if, let's say you had raised kids, but before you raised kids, you were a customer service rep at a company, go look on Indeed for other customer service jobs and read the job descriptions. And I bet it will remind you of a lot of things that go into that. Oh yeah, I've done conflict resolution and I've done call escalation and I've done sales script development and I've done, on and on and on. And you might suddenly have a whole bunch more stuff to put on your KSA list than you did before. Okay. And then the final piece on this is a lot of people get confused between skills and abilities. They seem kind of similar, but to the marketplace, they're very different things. The simple test, well, even simpler than what I've got on the slide, is if an 8th grader could say it, it's probably an ability. If they couldn't say it, it's probably a skill. Because again, abilities are not something you are taught. Abilities are natural strengths. Skills are things that you had to be taught and practiced to get good at. So as I say there in the example, like a lot of people say, oh, I've got all these transferable skills, like I'm good with people, I'm a good communicator, I'm results oriented, and I'm well organized. And I have to sort of gently say, none of those are skills. Those are all abilities. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, an 8th grader could be all those things. They could be good with people, well organized. So sadly, the market doesn't value those much because they're so common. If every high school kid could say they've got those same things, you're not going to find companies willing to pay much money for it. So you really want to focus to a large degree on what skills do you have. Like if your ability is a communicator, well, there's 100 skills like writing press releases, giving sales presentations, public speaking, that those are actually skills of communication that you will get paid for. So I know it's a little tricky at first, but I can't stress enough. Everything is what's happening is companies are saying, we're going to pay more money for problems that the average person can't solve. So if you're looking to make a decent living, you've got to start by finding some skills and knowledge the average person doesn't have, or acquiring that through education, right? Abilities as much as I with otherwise, and they're very valuable on the job, but they're not as enticing to companies when you're looking to get a job, because again, they're too common. Too many people say that they're results oriented, so you're not going to get much credit for that. Anyway, okay. So now where the magic happens. What do you do with all this data once you've collected it? Okay, here's the part of this. I honestly, if I pat myself on the back, this is the hard part, is like, how do you plug this in to the modern job market that keeps changing, keeps evolving, keeps moving? So I've got 3 methods I'm going to show you and demonstrate for you. And if there's anything you take away from tonight, I'm hoping those of you who want to make some changes that you go try some of these methods I'm going to show you. Okay. So the first method is the most common, and it's to go out to many, many online websites that have been designed to help people look at career options. Now, I'm going to tell you right up front, some of these don't always work all that well because a lot of them don't have data that's current. They're based on career data that's 10 or 20 years old. They also can't really take into consideration things like age, experience level, income needs, education. So most of them generally do a somewhat superficial analysis of, if you have these skills, maybe you should try this. So there's many, many more than the ones here, but I put what I consider probably 7 of the best ones I've come across, and they're all a little different and they work a little different way. So let me just demonstrate a few of these really quickly. So I just pulled up on the web here. One of my favorites, it's not very well known at all, is called Chegg Career Center. Why do I like Chegg over a lot of these others? Because somehow, and I wish I knew how, this database of careers has 10 times more modern careers than most of the other ones. Okay, so if I went into here and I took one of my knowledge or one of my skills or one of my abilities, let's say I had what's a good example? Let's say I'm really good, I'm a very creative person. That's an ability. But if I said creative, and I put that in the database and ran it, it says here's 92 careers that relate to creative. And it will not only show me obvious ones like graphic designer and art director, but things you wouldn't think of at first, like art dealer or multimedia designer, right? Or even up at the top, it had creative services manager. Now, you may not appreciate this as much as I do, but see, creative service manager is not a common career that's been around for decades. That's a relatively new niche. And I see that again and again with this site where it finds things. Showrunner is not a career that would be in most databases. Okay, what if I went back and I said, oh, I'm good with technology, put in that word, or actually let's do what would be a skill. What if I said, I'm really good at writing? Okay, that's kind of on the fence. But anyway, so if I just said what careers involve writing, most of us would think of, I could be a novelist, I could be a technical writer, I could be a grant writer, or I could be a copywriter. Most people would only think of like 5 things, but this site has 123. Oh, you could be a writing consultant. That's a career. I could be a web content writer, a feature writer, a songwriter. Okay. Now, again, it doesn't tell you anything about, how well your background fits, but it's helpful because it shows you all these things you might not have thought of that use that skill of writing. Publicist, and if you click on any of them, it's going to give you, in some cases, a video and a description of what that job is and things like that. So again, none of these are perfect, but I find Chegg to have much more current data than a lot of them. Okay. If I were to pick a few others, here's one that's on payscale.com. It's on my slide. This one's interesting because you put in a job you're thinking of. Let's say someday I want to be a VP of marketing or something. And what this one shows you is the typical pathway of jobs to get there, which is kind of interesting. Give it a second, it's loading. So they've got so much data on people, it shows you, how you get started and how you climb the ladder and where you can end up, assuming it must really be thinking hard here. Okay, so that should come up in a second. Someone asks, Kate asks, how do you build skills if you're not able to break into your desired field without being able to demonstrate them? Well, that's the catch-22 of most career change, and it's really frustrating. The short answer to that, one, training and education. Get whatever cutting edge classes, certifications, online learning will help you build those skills. Volunteer anywhere you can. Oh, can I go to a nonprofit? Can I volunteer sometimes to a startup? Can I find people who might allow you to work on those skills on a volunteer basis? And thirdly, networking is the grease that is the saving grace that it's really hard to get it to make a career change and just applying to jobs because you're always going to be less experienced than the people applying that have done it. But if you get your friends and your network, networking is a big topic, but to lobby for you and open the door for you to companies, there's much less competition and they might give you a chance just based on somebody vouching for you versus needing you to prove you're the world's expert in something. So you're absolutely right. It is a catch-22, but everyone who pulls it off has to try the training, the volunteering, and just prove to people, hey, I've got enough now to come in and do some things for you. Okay. I don't know why this site is not loading better. I might have broken it. I don't know. There we go. So you can see here, like this will tell you, oh, people start as a marketing manager and typically go to one of these 3 jobs and then move on to one of these jobs. And it even tells you the salaries you might expect at each level. So this one's a little different, but I think it's kind of a cool tool that gives you a visual view at how a lot of careers unfold. Okay. So unfortunately, I don't have time to show you all of those, but just real quickly, there's one here that'll tell you whatever your college major is, what the common careers are that relate to that. One of my favorites that's new is JobScan, which is a tool a lot of you might have heard of that usually helps with resume submissions. They added a brand new tool called Career Change, which is fascinating because you upload your resume and what it does is it takes all the KSAs of your resume and brings back a list of all the jobs they have, which are very current, that relate in some way to your knowledge, skills, and abilities. So it's like one-stop shopping. It's really cool. So these aren't perfect and you have to just, see if you get lucky, but I encourage you to look at some of them because these are some of the best ones and they all work a little differently. But as far as what the world has invented for helping with this stuff, these are the best of the breed. Okay. All right. More helpful than that is this next method that I use constantly with my clients. Okay. So this takes a little mental shift. So Indeed.com, for those who don't know, Indeed.com is pretty widely regarded as the biggest and best job website. LinkedIn is a close number 2, but Indeed is just the Google of job boards. So everyone is trained to think of, I go to Indeed when I know the job I want. I go there to look for the accounting job or the project management job. What very few people appreciate is there is no bigger database and more accurate database of real-time career options today, because this is the real market. This is millions of companies every day saying, here's the job I have, here's what I call it, here's the KSAs that go into it, because every job description, whether they call it KSAs, is built of KSAs, right? We want these skills. We want 5 years of industry background. We want this education. So I have to go through this quicker than I wish I did. But for those who attended any of my earlier classes, if you learn the basics of what's called Boolean syntax, which is a very, very simple programming language where you put ands and ors between searches to run more precise searches on websites. Now, unfortunately, since we couldn't spend half an hour on that, I have a link here. It's kind of messy, but if you go to this link here, it's got a tutorial on Boolean if you're totally new to it. I've also got a bunch of examples here that if those are enough for you to get the hang of it. But let me show you how this works, because I don't think there's anything more effective than this when looking for career options. So if I go back to the internet and I just go over to Indeed.com, okay, it's a very simple site. It's got a what box and a where box. So what if you said to me, or, I did a lot of soul searching, Matt, and I really want a job that I love kids and youth and working with children. So what we would do is we would say, okay, let's go in the what box and let's think of every word we can think of that relates to that concept. Kids, children, child, youth. I'm sure there's others, juveniles, adolescents, or whatever, but I'll just kind of stop there. So what I'm basically saying, well, companies, any company that has anything to do with kids or a job that involves kids, they've got to use one of those words because they have to use English as well. So if we think of every synonym for that concept and put it down, that's going to find us any job that involves working with kids. Okay. So if I did that and nothing else and put Seattle, okay, it's going to be a lot of hits, but it says, okay, here's 1,200 jobs in Seattle right now that relate to work to kids in some way. So you would go down and you look at, child life specialist. What is that? Youth services lead, early learning, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things you notice that's making life so hard now is every company is coming up with silly new names for things. So it's not as easy as just going in and saying, I want to be a counselor, because there's 100 names for that. So you put those in, and as someone asked, great question, Amy, yes, the syntax words, the ands and the ors and the nots have to be fully capitalized. The other words don't, but the syntax words have to all be in caps, okay? Okay, but let's take this farther. Well, that's a really general search because, there's a million things that involve kids, teacher, or whatever that you may not want to do. So here's where it gets interesting. What you then want to do is put that bucket of clues in parentheses. That says treat this as one clue and then add a capital and add something else you're good at. Oh, what if I wanted a job that involved, I did my KSA analysis and I love presenting, giving presentations and public speaking. What if I added the words and presenting, presentations, or public speaking? Now, a little Boolean, for those who don't know Boolean, is any word that's, anytime you're searching on a phrase that's more than a single word, you got to put quote marks around it to keep those two words together. So all my other words are one word. I don't need quotes, but public speaking is two words. So I just instinctively put quote marks around it. And you'll see in all my examples on the slides that I've done that. Okay, so I know it's hard to see here, but at the very end, I've got to put a parenthesis, a right parenthesis, because that's going to box in these clues, right? So I've got one box in parentheses of kids and kid-related words and one box using the skill of presenting. So watch what this does. I run that and it says now it knocks it down to 226 that would use two of the things you want in a job, one of your interests and one of your skills. So now we look at this and we go, I wouldn't have thought of director of legal services. Now that's probably not realistic if you're not a lawyer, but emergency manager, office manager, program manager for TechBridge Girls, a nonprofit that helps girls with tech careers, race and equity manager. So my point is, even I haven't heard of most of these jobs. American Cultural Liaison, I don't even know what that is. But what I love about it is I know for a fact, if I open and read these jobs, everyone has something to do with children and something to do with public speaking. So if you do this kind of homework, you're not going to want to do all these things, and there'll be some false positives. But see, my point is, no test and no assessment can tell you results like this that are real time and current. Senior Researcher, Education and Employment Division. No one grows up and says, I want to be one of those, right? So as you can tell, I get really excited about this method, and you can keep stringing stuff together. So I know you get the hang of it. So someone asked, can you use a not? Yes, you can. So the fanciest trick I'm going to give you on this, and you'll just have to experiment a bit. What if, here's a search I've done for some people. So I have like a lawyer come in and say, I've never really enjoyed being an attorney. I want to do something different. But then we do the analysis of their priorities and they say, but I don't want to start over from scratch in a $10 an hour job. And I've got this law degree I paid $100,000 for that I somehow have to get used somehow. So the search for that person, we would say, okay, let's look for any job that asks for a law degree, if that's the most valuable piece of knowledge they have, right? So if I searched on law degree, what do you think I'm going to see? I'm going to see attorney, judge, counsel, law professor. But the fanciest you need to get is you can put a capital not. And then one other last thing is I can put a title colon. If I put a title colon, anything after that will kick it out of the job title, but not the body of the job. So if I had a lawyer who said, I don't want to be an attorney or a lawyer or a paralegal or a counsel or a judge or a professor, I apologize. I know it's hard to see all that in there. But what I've done here is I've said, tell me any job I'm not thinking of that asks for a law degree, but is not in the title, an attorney, a judge, something I already know I don't want to do. You could just as easily say, give me a job that involves educating and teaching that is not a teacher, a counselor, a tutor, and see what is left that involves educating people that's not the standard stuff. Okay. So if I were to run this one, it says here are 16 jobs that involve law degrees: city prosecutor, enterprise negotiator, whatever that is. Okay, so here's jobs that are not the ones that person hypothetically doesn't want, but they have something to do with law degrees. So I'll move on, but I know it's a little tricky at first, but hopefully that slide, and I've got 5 or so examples in there. It takes a little time, but I'm saying it again. If you learn how to run those kind of searches, you take your KSA data, run it through Indeed, that's going to tell you virtually anything that exists today that combines those things you want to use in a career, assuming you've got the words right. If you forgot a word or didn't, So I'll leave you on that piece for that, but that's just a method, if you get the hang of it, I think is more powerful than any, because it is so cutting edge in real time. It's the real marketplace, okay? Now, someone did ask a question, what advice do I have to someone looking to find a job in another state? With all due respect, Gabriel, that's more of a job hunting question. So you would be much better served in the earlier webinars about LinkedIn and resumes. We talked quite a bit about actually job hunting, and a lot of those techniques talk about how to do this in other states. Tonight, this is just about changing careers, which wouldn't really matter state to state. But go check out those other webinars if you haven't already. Those are much more on point. Okay. So then it brings us. I got so excited, I ripped the headphone jack right out of my computer. Sorry about that. Okay, hold on one second. All right, everyone can hear me now. I will assume, please chat with me if not. So the third method I was going to show you, thank you, Russ, before we wind down, is LinkedIn, right? This big site most people are on, most people use it for job hunting. You can take some of that same Boolean, okay, except for the title command. It does not work on LinkedIn. But you can take the ands and the ors and the parentheses, and think about this. On LinkedIn, if I jump over to LinkedIn, there are 600 million people on LinkedIn. There are millions of people who probably have done exactly what you've done career-wise, and they've already had to figure out something new to do. And 10 years ago, they got out of their field and did a new one. Very few people I've met, even other LinkedIn professionals, think about the career research potential. Now, this is a little sloppy, I'll admit. It's not perfect. But if I went into LinkedIn and just used some Boolean to say, is there anyone on LinkedIn who says anything about kids or child or children, and also does anything that relates to presentations or public speaking? So I'm basically saying, show me out of 600 professionals what are other real people doing? So this isn't hypothetical. These are real people. So you would just look at the people that come up. Okay, here's a public speaking coach. Here's a podcaster. Now you'd have to look in their profile to see where the kids thing comes in. Okay, here's more public speaking coaches. And again, a lot of them may be doing similar things, but if you're just looking for ideas, so you just keep going down, and let's see if we can find one that's like a lot of public speaking coaches in here. Here's a child development specialist. Okay, here's a communication coach. The thing with kids, here's an example, child life specialist at Children's Health. Now, I'm not sure about all of you, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what a child life specialist is. It sounds important. It sounds cool. But see, that's the stuff you'll pick out of here is maybe you look through 100 people and you come up with 3 new career ideas you wouldn't have thought of. And then you can look at the person's profile and kind of see their background. How did they get into it? What credentials do they have? And if you're really brave, write them a note and say, Kelsey, I hope you don't think this is creepy, but I'm fascinated by what you do for a living and would just love to know more about it and how you got into it. Not everyone's going to respond, but a lot of people, if approached appropriately, love talking about their careers and the goods and the bads of them. So the thing with LinkedIn is you have a real life person involved, and you can see what are other people doing for a living that have kind of got similar skills and interests to me. So I think it's a very overlooked source of brainstorming. Okay. All right. So watching our time, we're getting tight on things, but I'm going to wrap that up by just saying, again, I wish we had a lot more time for me to demonstrate that, but if that wet your whistle and you grab the slides, if you spend a few hours trying those 3 methods, funneling in your KSA data, that is going to be the most effective way I can think of to see what the world might have for you today, because they each have their own pros and cons. But most importantly, it's dealing with real-time data, not data that was collected 20 years ago. Okay. Wrapping up here. So what if you do decide to change careers? Now, some people may do the analysis and say, you know, I actually think my job's better than I thought, or I can't find anything I'm willing to reinvent myself and take 2 steps back, but many of you might find something you want to change. Okay, so I would first say if you're changing careers, or even if you're shifting careers, I wouldn't even look at it as a job search. I would look at it as a research project, because in most cases, it depends, but you're not qualified quite enough yet to go bang down a door and get a job. You can try, but normally any significant career change, you're going to have to do a couple months of training, study, research to get smart on that field before you will be able to talk a good enough game or have built the networking connections to have better hopes of breaking into it. So you would be out asking questions. What training should I go get? What are the trends in this field? How does one break into it? You got to look at it as a research project, not a job hunt, if it's something you haven't done before. Okay. We've got a wealth of ways to get education. Of course, tonight here, we've got the wonderful folks at UW PCE, the UW Alumni Association, not only packed with resources to get training and certifications, but also the networking possibilities, talking to fellow alumni who are in careers you're trying to get into. Yolanda would probably love to talk to you about that. So don't forget to take advantage of the education and the stuff that surrounds the educational environments, like the networking. Okay, as I said earlier, and I'll say again, if any thought that you can change careers or even shift careers significantly and compete effectively for published want ads, I hate to say it, it's unlikely you're going to succeed, because published openings are the most competitive, and that's where you're up against 100 other people or whatever. So you have to get good and embrace the power of networking, relationships. People get hired all the time without being the best person for a job on paper, because they have someone opening the door or vouching for them. So I know that's tougher for introverts like myself, but there's going to be a lot of advice. I think even Catherine Saxer, who's going to be doing a few of these webinars in the coming weeks, is going to talk a lot about networking. Some of the LinkedIn webinars talk about networking. And I know many of you are sick of that word, but it really is the key to a career change, is to get people involved in the process to help you open the door when your resume alone isn't going to cut it, just because you don't quite have the background yet. Okay. And lastly, one final positive thought is bet on yourself. Yeah, a lot of career, you don't get paid to do things that you haven't done before as much as you get paid things you've done for years. So in most cases, when you change careers, you're taking a step or 2 back in terms of pay and title. But the good news is people get ahead much faster today. because jobs move constantly. Companies, people are so much more fluid, and they don't usually stay in jobs for 20 years anymore, clogging it up. So I don't have time, but I could tell you many people who took a 40% pay cut over what they've done for 20 years, got in a new field they were more excited about, and they were running the place, a year later, because all of those great qualities and abilities bubbled up. And once people got the chance to see them in action, okay. Oops, sorry, my everything's going wrong with my, go away phone. All right, just gonna, I've got my phone. I'm trying to unlock it until, there we go. Sorry about that. When it rains, it pours. So I was just saying, as I said, if don't think that a career change doesn't involve often taking a step back, but at some point you got to invest in yourself, believe in yourself, and realize if you get in the right field, you can rapidly advance from there. Okay. So that's the end of my formal slides. I hope there were some new techniques and ideas in there that are helpful. Again, there'll be a recording and a handout for some of those links and stuff I put together. Just go ahead and grab the handout off the UW site. I can stick around for a couple more minutes if there's any final questions. If not, feel free to just say goodbye. And if any of you had questions you didn't want to share publicly or we didn't have time, I've got my email here. If you wanted to shoot me a question offline, I'd be happy to give you a quick answer to it. Okay. All right. Thank you, folks. Those who are signing off. Any other final questions? Okay, here's some good ones. So I'm UW folks, I think, are going to answer those folks asking where the link is. So they'll share that with you. So Jessica asked, how do you do a search that excludes a company? Okay, great question. So it depends on where we're talking about. If we're talking about LinkedIn, you can run a search. Let me just pull up a random one. So if I run a search on LinkedIn, there's an all filters button hiding over here. A lot of people miss. And if you click the all filters button and go down, there's a company box near the bottom. So I could say, don't give me a job at Microsoft, or don't give me a job at Amazon. So if I'm on LinkedIn, I'm using the company box to kick things out. Okay. If you're thinking about Indeed, let's go back to Indeed. You could say, oh, I'm interested in project manager jobs, and a whole bunch of jobs come up. Okay. And then you could say, well, you could say not Microsoft, but that's going to kick out every company that asks for Microsoft Office or something. So with certain companies, you got to be careful. But if it was like Boeing, you can say not Boeing, not Starbucks or whatever, and be fine. For Microsoft, that's the main one. You'd probably have to just live with it, or sometimes company : let's see if that Indeed might support that one. No, that didn't work. So the only big exception is Microsoft. For all the other ones, just put capital not in the company name. Okay. Hope that helps. Oh, great. Thanks, Vina. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you coming. Any final thoughts, final questions?
All right. I think
I think we've got it.
Yeah, I think we finished on time. Thank you, Matt. This was an excellent webinar. For people who are asking for the link, the question has been answered, but also the same place that you RSVP'd for the event. You can find the slides and presentation recording there in a few days. It won't be up tomorrow, for sure. And let's sign off for now. So we set a precedent. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, everybody who joined. Thank you, Jamie, for hosting, and Kayla for being here from UW-AA. See you in the other webinar. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.